the merge is like looking more and more in the front view mirror, and it's looking more and more like, hey, this thing is going to actually happen. And once the merge actually happens, then I expect like morale is going to go way up, right? Like I basically expect that the merge is going to be kind of not priced in, by which I mean like not even just like market terms, but even just kind of like psychological and narrative terms. Yeah, like in kind of like in narrative terms, I think it's not going to be priced in like pretty much until like after it happens. I think it's like both faster and slower. Like I do think that our results have been pretty mixed so far, right? Because if you compare the process of getting the beacon chain out the door to the process of getting ETH 1.0 out the door, like the ETH 1.0 took 20 months, right? From like myself writing the first version of the white paper to launch. But here, like we're looking at a merge that will take like maybe about 22 months or 21 months after the original launch of the beacon chain. And of course, the original launch of the beacon chain itself happened after a development process. Sharding still taking a while. Things like account abstraction are taking a while. EIP, but on the other hand, like EIP 1559, that's something that was like a huge economic reform, and it's one that's had like actually pretty very significant consequences, right? That's been great for fee stability, it's been great for fast inclusion, it's been great for lots of things. So I think there's kind of these two opposing pressures that we as a community have to deal with, where one is kind of pressure that speeds things up because there's more awesome researchers, there's more awesome developers, there's like a lot more effort going into all of these problems. But then there's also the pressure slowing us down, which is like the desire to not break things, the desire to kind of implement stuff across multiple clients to make sure we have all of these test suites. Also, the desire to kind of simultaneously build all of this surrounding infrastructure, right? Like when Ethereum launched, it did not have like this massive ecosystem of block explorers and like side infrastructure that the beacon chain has already. I think like both of those pressures exist. To some extent, that's healthy, and like to some extent, this actually gets into stuff that I'm going to talk about in this presentation, which is that I think it's like healthy for Ethereum to have a bit of a move fast and break things attitude, like specifically over the next couple of years, because like, we do need to radically change stuff, right? Like switching the consensus algorithm, moving over to sharding, moving over to like a very different model for how transactions get included. But at the same time, there's kind of this longer term desire where, we do want L1 to kind of settle down into something that's like very stable, independent, and it's not something that kind of wins by outmaneuvering the alternatives. It's something that wins by outlasting the alternatives. I guess we're both, doing all of the good work that needs to be done to kind of get through all of these kind of big stages at the beginning. At the same time, like there's also this question of like, how do we properly set ourselves up for this longer term future where the layer one starts to become this a bit of a more static thing, and the improvements are more incremental, they're more kind of technical and safety oriented. Once that happens, then Ethereum will just get slower, and that's fine, right? But then layer 2 work is only gonna get faster, I think. And if the recognition that stuff like the merge does actually need to happen on a timetable, like I think that's also something that's picking up. The recognition that things like scaling are something that needs to kind of happen on a timetable. I think I've sometimes like said before, you can lose $1 billion from a hack, but you can also lose $1 billion from everybody just needing to pay way higher fees than they have to. One is more flashy and glamorous, but the other is also actually a really serious kind of drain and tax on the ecosystem. But I think people are working on that. There's constant good news every couple of months, and I'm confident that we're actually getting to an Ethereum that's pretty great. The merge is like looking more and more in the front view mirror, and it's looking more and more like, hey, this thing is going to actually happen. And once the merge actually happens, then I basically expect that the merge is going to be kind of not priced in, by which I mean like not even just like market terms, but even just kind of like psychological and narrative terms. Yeah, like in kind of like in narrative terms, I think it's not going to be priced in like pretty much until like after it happens. There's we see even today like a lot of people kind of act as though, hey, this environmental issue is this fatal flaw, and yeah, sure, Ethereum mumbles some noises about proof of stake, but come on, they've been saying that since forever, and it's not going anywhere. But like, no, it's going to go somewhere.
Right.
And at this point, I think the only way to just convince a huge number of people that it's going to go somewhere is just by actually going there.
Sure.
And, once that happens, it's going to change a lot of minds. Right. I mean, I think one of the big lessons for the community has been around the kind of stablecoin and Luna stuff. Actually got to a point where what we might call principles-based thinkers kind of got a bit demoralized, right? Because, if you're a principles-based thinker, then you're going to say anything that offers more than 10% APY is like basically unsustainable at best, a scam at worst, because nothing in fiat land can stably offer 10% returns with like very low risk of losses. So why the hell do we think the crypto space can do better, especially given that there isn't really kind of much of a real economy backing up those growth rates? But at the same time, we in 2020, 2021, we just saw this kind of ongoing, yield farming craze, and you just regularly get like, 90% APYs on yield farming, USDC or whatever. That's demoralizing, right? Because I think a lot of people even started thinking like, wait, okay, maybe we're in a new paradigm, and maybe this whole like sanity and logic thing actually is just a fiat world Web 2 prejudice. And Luna suddenly taught people that like, oh no, principles actually do matter, and we actually do live in reality. I'm very happy that incident happened just in time. I mean, I wish that it had happened a few months earlier and blew up like $5 billion instead of 50. Even still, it's better that it happened now than if it happened later when it could have blown up 500 billion. When something blows up $5 billion, it's like, okay, fine, it's a bunch of rich computer geeks and they're kind of playing around and it's their fault. At $50 billion, people get more scared, but at $500 billion, it's, there's just a huge pressure for, all the big mainstream actors to consider the events to be their responsibility. And then, like, crypto's just gonna completely lose its room to maneuver. So I think, this is one of the reasons why, like, I've also never really joined this kind of enthusiastic desire to get a Bitcoin or an Ethereum ETF. In these phases, like, crypto kind of deserves to have a longer period of time, and needs to have a longer period of time during which, like, it is an ecosystem where this is the frontier, this is the West, and this is not financial advice. You can lose everything that you put in, and all of that. And once you start kind of plugging it into mainstream infrastructure, where like funds representing random 72-year-olds start throwing money into this stuff by default, then you're just entering a different ballgame, and like that's not really a ball game that we should be trying to enter that quickly. Sure. Basically, if you have to choose between kind of two regulatory evils, where one of those evils is, regulators coming in and telling the industry what it can and can't do, and the other one is the crypto industry gets freedom, but it gets firewalled off of, reality, then, like, I choose the second over the first, like, any day. So, fortunately, I think, Luna broke before it managed to kind of get to that level of scale where it really started kind of, jumping outside of the firewall. Even still, the collapse kind of reminded people that, like, yes, reality matters, that yes, fundamentals matter, yes, principles matter, yes, this thing that you're throwing your money into that promises 6% returns and has been consistently giving you 6% returns for the last, like, 2 years might actually be something that's worth getting out of. And it's, good that we learned those lessons. The question I sometimes ask myself with like all of these weird opportunities is like taking a long view, right? What is the probability that nothing bad will happen to this thing over 10 years, right? And let's say maybe the probability is like 75%. Okay, if the probability is 75% that nothing bad will happen over 10 years, 25% chance that it drops to zero, that's equivalent to an interest rate of negative 2.5%. Like, is the difference that you're getting really worth a 2.5%? And often it isn't. But like, I think in order for it to be kind of like easy for people to start thinking in that way, like sometimes you do need to just have like memorable examples of like the bad thing actually happening. Right. But the good news is now we do. Sometimes the blank of sanity has to be refreshed by the blood of people getting wrecked, essentially. I think basically what's happening is that like the fact that there is a permanent frontier and the fact that the permanent frontier is permanently risky is obscuring the fact that the frontier actually is moving.
Sure.
And the number of specific things that's been de-risked risk and is safe is actually increasing all the time, right? Like back in 2014, just an exchange was part of the frontier, and now like that's totally not true, right? And people just know like, hey, yeah, Uniswap works and it's safe. Keep stuff in your wallet and just use Uniswap when you need to trade things. And otherwise, when you need to move between fiat, like an exchange is just a pass through. Like you could use it, but you don't want to hodl stuff there. The ability to just reliably hold your coins has been improving, right? Like we've moved from lots of crazy stories of like coin theft in 2013 and 2014, and now things are better off with hardware wallets, and I think 2 years from now things will be like even better with more social recovery wallets. Multi-sigs for organizations have been quietly getting mainstreamed. Multi-sigs for individuals, not quite yet, but I think that's a UX problem. On the one hand, it's like this is the frontier, this is the West, but on the other hand, it's like the West is moving west, right? Like. It's not like the West in America where you get to California and you're done. It's like Singapore where like where like they literally just keep on building land, and at this point 20% of their country is like stuff that they've built. So we could we could keep like biddling safe territory, and so I think that trend's going to continue, and I think like the set of things that you actually can do safely is going to just keep going up more and more. And it's the sort of thing that we won't notice because like the sign of that happening isn't news. The sign of that happening is lack of news. If once you kind of get that kind of skill of learning to pay attention to lack of news, it's an interesting skill to acquire, by the way. Like if you try to get up-to-date information about like any event where there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of like highly incentivized discourse going on, like listening to what doesn't get said is often like one of the most revealing things. And here like what's not getting said, well, there's industries that or like sub parts of crypto that used to be completely crazy that are just actually settled down and doing quite fine today.